Kiss had done about 9 albums, and we also did Kiss Meets the Phantom, the first movie that they had ever done, which put a lot of strain on the group. It's a lot harder doing a movie than it was doing an album. One of the things that came out of this was that Peter and Ace especially, and also Gene and Paul, had thought it might be time to do solo albums. Well, we weren't sure whether we were going to do 4 solo albums or 1 or 2 or 1 at a time. But as it happens, we decided to do 4, thinking it would be a unique way of promoting Kiss. Also, it had never been done before. And we decided at that same time that if they were ready, we would put them all out at the same time. So effectively, it would be one huge Kiss album with separate solo albums. After finishing the solo albums, getting ready to release them all at once was quite a procedure. We had to do different ads announcing the release of the 4 solo albums, and then the planned announcements of them going gold and then platinum. As it happens, when we first released them, the first ad, instead of announcing the solo albums by Kiss, the wrong ad went out first and said they were already gold. Well, they hadn't even been released yet. So this kind of stirred the industry a bit. Then we had to actually ship the albums and start promoting the albums. At the beginning, everyone was so excited about the solo albums. Neil Bogart had decided to press over 1 million units apiece. This was more records than had been pressed for any album at that time, certainly for a release of any one album, never mind about releasing 4 albums at once. So many albums eventually got to the stores that the word on the street was there'll be more albums coming back than there were actually pressed. And there was an awkward time for the group and for the record label. There were many complications with the release of the solo albums. One were the advertisements. They had come out in the wrong order. Instead of the release of the albums, the first ad came out saying they were already gold. On top of that, the amount of pressings of the albums were uniquely high. There was over 1 million units of every album already pressed, and most of them were being sent to the stores, the large record stores, and stores all over the country. So the word on the street was that more albums would come back that were actually pressed. It kept looking like we weren't selling any records. There were so many albums in every store that the piles and piles of records looked like they would never be sold. So the word in the industry was that the albums actually weren't making it and weren't being sold, and that effectively could have been a flop. The truth of the matter is they all sold over 1 million units, and eventually were one of the most successful group of solo albums ever released in the record industry. Gene Simmons. Well, there's a one of a kind. Gene was really the driving force behind Kiss, keeping at it day and night ever since I met him back in '73. One of the things Gene had a problem with, though, was doing interviews for Kiss. He always sounded like a school teacher to us, and all of us kind of got after him over and over again, that he's a rock star. He had to talk like a rock star. Well, he really couldn't ever get that through his head in the earlier days, so Paul, Peter, and Ace kind of ganged up on him and said, look, if you're going to talk like a school teacher, we're then going to do the interview. So you can make a few sounds and grunts and groans, and every once in a while say something short, Gene. Remember? Short, Gene. But we're going to be the rock and rollers, and we'll talk for you. So ever since that moment in time, Gene has always been pretty much the quiet one, certainly in rock and roll interviews. One of the things